Okay, guys, in this episode, I'm going to go into objects and classes. So we're going to create an object from which will be a blueprint for the data which will be transferring over from the client to the server. So I'm just going to create that object right now, or rather that class. So right here, new Java class. And I'm going to name this login because we're going to be passing login data, and that's pretty much what the app is going to do. So I'm going to delete everything here. And from there, I'm going to build up two strings, one named username, and the other one named password. And from there, we're going to create a constructor. So I'm just going to use NetBeans shortcuts. So I'm going to insert code. I'm sorry if you don't get to see most of these pop-up dialogues because I'm using a Windows built-in recorder, so it doesn't really catch everything. So I'm going to click constructor and then check both values that appear, and then boom. So same thing with getters. I'm going to put in two getters for each one of the values, and setters as well. And there we have it. Now, as I was testing this program, I noticed that it had a little issue because I'm passing an object with data in it. So the data needs to be serializable. I have no idea what that means at this point, but I'm yet to look into it. So how I fixed it was to make it serializable. So just implement that class. I'm going to show you how it's going to fail exactly, and then how you remember that you're supposed to place in the serializable class. So make sure it implements the serializable interface. And then that's it. And then you close that. Let's go back to the client. And then we're just going to create another method here. Rather the main method, in fact. So the main method, and I'm going to create an object of login details. So I'm just going to pull up the scanner class, and INP is equal to new scanner, and then the system.in, terminate that, and then I'm going to say string username is equal to INP dot next. And then I'm going to create a string for the password as well. Equal to INP dot next. And now I'm just going to put in some please enter username and here password. I'm just going to use print and not print line. So string password, and that should be good. And then from there, I'm going to pass in that data, the login class, and just call it data. So that's the object of which you're going to be using. And down here, we're going to call that method. So suck, and pass in the object. So I just have to initialize the instantiate rather the login object here, and call it data as well, easy to do, new login. And it requires those values, the password and the username, which it already has passed in for me. And then I'm going to pass these two into that object. And yeah, I think this should work. So in our main method, we're going to enter the username and password, and then create the the login object, and then pass that object to the sock method, which is right up here, and that's going to connect to the socket and pass it to the server. So in the server, we need to actually, rather in the client, we need to pass that data properly to the server using our input and our output object stream. So just down here, I'm going to say to server dot write object. Yeah, my PC is using a bit there. Write object, and we're going to pass in to the server. And since we're also expecting data from the server, I'm just going to write it right here to say string from server and I have to explicitly define that string value to say that it's going to be receiving string data. And then sorry, I made a mistake here. Not the server, I'm just going to name it notification from the server. And then from there, I'm going to say from server dot read object. Where is that now? There we go. It's a mess, by the way. So here we're writing to the server, and here we're reading whatever is coming from the server. So remember that when you're passing data to the server, you write object, and when you're getting data from the server, you read from the object. And we explicitly define what kind of data type we're getting from those two values, right? And down here, I'm just going to print the data from the server, and from there, I'm going to say notification. Okay, I think that should work. So now let's go to our server and actually implement how we're going to be receiving data from the server. So I'm going to delete that and just say data received. And right above it, I'm going to receive that data. Right, so to receive it, I also have to implicitly define what kind of data I'm receiving, which is the login data type, and data is equal to in braces login, and then from client dot read object, just to leave you to type. And let's just print that data out, and then we're going to say the name or the username is equal to data dot get username. Because remember, for us to get the value from the object itself, we have to implicitly define what kind of value we're getting from it. So right now we're getting the username, and I'm just going to replicate that and then specify the password, and here not get username, that the password. So yeah, I think that should work. I'm just gonna cross my notes here, make sure that it works. So yeah, that should actually work. So I'm gonna save that, and then I'm going to show you how exactly this is going to break. So I'm going to put this thing side by side, if it will allow me. Yeah, there we go. And I noticed that I was way too zoomed out. So hopefully now you can see the data, although both the files properly. Yeah. So now the other thing that you need to keep in mind is for you to actually run your files, you need to run the server first before you run the client, because the client is going to start looking for a connection to the server immediately when it starts running, right? So you need to run the server first before the client. So remember that. So I'm going to right click and run file, and there we go. Server is running on port 8080. Just gonna cross check to make sure I'm connected to both, which is okay. And from here, I'm gonna run the client as well. So I'll run the file, and yeah, let's put in our username. Say Jane. Password run pass 123. Your typical password. And when I press enter here, I think the server should have crashed. You see, what happens is usually nothing happens because it keeps fighting for the data. So I just aborted the server. That's why it's saying error happened. But let me make sure that it actually prints out proper error plus ex. Slash n plus ex. Right in here as well. Slash n plus ex. By the way, when I'm writing this, I'm assuming that most of you already know most of these things, the Java basics, like slash n standing for break lines. So if not, leave a comment in the section and I'll explain a little bit more of what I've done in terms of how you asked me what you haven't understood. So let's run the server again. Hopefully it works this time. So I'm just going to wait for it to finish here at the base. And it's running, and then run the client file. I kept experiencing this problem as well. When I was testing, it just didn't want to work. So hopefully this time it does. So Jane and pass enter. And yeah, nothing happens. Both the server and the client are running, but no data is being passed. So I'm going to stop the server again. Let me just try to find out what's happening. Connection reset because I stopped both files. Just going to close this too. Okay, so without further ado, I'm just going to implement the serializable here to make sure that that's not a problem. Likewise, save that. Likewise here, implement serializable so that it serializes the data before it can send it to the client object. So output, input. And again, all this code is going to be available online. I'm going to put a link in the description so that you can get it and test it out on your own. If it doesn't work, let me know so that we can look into that. So I'm just going to print a little bit of an S out in here. Just make sure that something is happening. test whether it's actually working or not. And I seem to be running out of time. So I'm going to run the server again. Okay, server's running. Let's run the client file again. Okay, so let's try it again. 1, 2, 3. Yay, it worked. Okay, so if we go back to the server, see the server's console, we have username Jane and password 123. That's what we printed right here in the server. And when we go to the client console, we have the data from the server, data received. So it's working. So basically what I've done, just a quick run up before I go. In the server, we made sure that it implements serializable because the data needs to be serialized as it's being transferred over the network. And right here, we did the same with our client, and we also did the same thing with our login class, which is the thing we're using to create the login object. So yeah, hope you learned something, and I'll continue next in our video where we'll be creating the GUI interface.